One of 5 roundabout projects that have been delayed this year, and in most of these cases, the Lucas County Engineer's Office says Toledo Edison is to blame.
And that led to a formal complaint. And new tonight, 13 Action News anchor Lily Lowndes explains how Toledo Edison is responding.
Lucas County Engineer Mike Panuski said delays caused by Toledo Edison are not new, but these delays were the worst he's seen in about 8 years. He took a complaint to the state, and now Toledo Edison is responding. It may have taken several steps back to get a step forward. We're learning Toledo Edison has assigned someone to a new position after the company was on the hook for disrupting major construction projects.
All of our roundabouts this year were delayed. 5
roundabouts were on the Lucas County Engineers list this construction season, each with a targeted start date. Crews could not break ground until power poles were moved from the right-of-way. Lucas County Engineer Mike Panuski said not one intersection was ready on time. Panuski warned Toledo Edison in advance, but pole relocation did not happen until weeks after it was supposed to at Monclova and Albin and Monclova and Waterville-Monclova roads. I understand there was a complaint with PUCO. Where does that stand? Tired of repeat problems with waiting, Engineer Panuski took a complaint to the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio, or PUCO. He said the delays Edison caused at 2 roundabouts was jeopardizing funding, contractor damages, and school operation at Monclova Primary School, which is near one of the projects. The complaint notes he told Toledo Edison in February 2024 that the utilities needed to be moved by February 2026. That gave the utility company 2 years to act, but they were still late.
No matter which way you try to look at it, Edison has to act first.
PUCO reached out to Toledo Edison leaders who have since met with the Lucas County Engineer's Office. A Toledo Edison representative told me that the company now has a public works coordinator to oversee utility relocation projects with local governments. They say they're looking to make sure that these projects are tracked and completed as efficiently as possible. For Panuski,
that process to this point is working well. We'll see how it works in future years.
Reporting for the I-Team, Lily Lowndes, 13 Action News.
Tonight.